So first of all, I need to find my CV. I don't even know where my CV is. So this is my name, my contact details, a professional statement. So I put this part of the page into columns. On one side, I have my education. On the other side, I have skills. I try to keep my skills in bullet points, and I don't want it to exceed 6. So I have 5 now. Time to hit submit. Hello loves, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chioma. If you're new on here, welcome. Anyway, so this is the part 2 I promised you about the interview that I flunked. Yeah, so in the part 1 of this video, I talked about dropping a few balls at work. So if you're interested and you want to know more about this very horrible week that I had, both in my personal life and at work, then maybe you want to go check that video out, because I started from that video and this is just a continuation. I wasn't able to talk about flunking my interview in my last video because it went on for too long. Okay, I just wanted to take this opportunity to not only talk about the experience of not passing that interview, but also talk a little bit about some of the things that I learned from this experience, some of the feedback that I got, and basically things that would help me to prepare better in future. But as well, because I have passed a few interviews in the past, right, I thought it might also be a great opportunity to share some of those things that I have found helpful in my previous interviews and just bring that on here. And like I said, I hope it will help you too. So let's begin. Let me talk about the interview. Now, a little bit of a backstory about why I applied for this role in the first place. Shortly after I started this job, that position became vacant. That was like less than a year after I started, the position became vacant. But at that time, I didn't feel like I was prepared because I started this job in unusual circumstances. I started the job and then 2 days later, we went into the first ever lockdown in March of 2020. So I had to learn everything about this job remotely, and I continued working from home for like the first 6 or 8 months before that lockdown was lifted. We went back into the office, and before we knew it, another lockdown was announced. We went back into lockdown. So it's been like that for the past 2 years since starting in this role. But at the time that this position first became vacant, which was last year, I was actually approached to express interest in this role, but I just said I wasn't ready, and so I didn't apply for it. So 1 year later, the same opportunity came up again. And then again, I was told that the role was going to be advertised once again, and if I wanted to apply, then to apply. I even had a chat from my manager who gave me some foundation around what was expected of that role. But you know what? I felt a little pressured, and I'm not going to say that this pressure came externally, but I felt pressured from within me because this opportunity had passed the first time. I declined it. And then the second time around, I also felt like it was strange for me to pass up that opportunity again. But I'm going to be very honest with you. I still did not think I was prepared for it. And it wasn't so much about preparation. It was more about needing answers around how fulfilling I would find that role. Okay. It just seemed to me like it was a role that I would probably not find so much fulfillment in, because one of the elements of my job, my current role, which I really enjoy, is that one-on-one interaction with students. I really love that part of the job. But then in the team lead position, there wasn't going to be much of that, if any of it at all. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to lose that. Instead, it sounded very, what would I say, high level stakeholder engagement, where you would just be in and out of meetings, preparing reports and things like that. And I don't feel like it's, I didn't feel like it was something that I would enjoy. And so even after that advert went live, I sat on that decision for forever. As a matter of fact, I feel like my application would have been the very last one through the door before the deadline at 11:59. As they say, you would never know if you don't try. So I decided I was just going to throw my hat in the ring and see where that went. Very last minute, so I put in an application. I went into the interview, I flunked the interview, and can I just say that I actually felt relieved. I wasn't surprised that I felt more relieved than disappointed at the outcome, okay? And I feel like that already was a red flag. Those very strong feelings of reluctance, of hesitancy from the very beginning should have been a red flag. It's one thing when you are keen to be in a role, but your reluctance or your fear comes from the fact that it's just that healthy fear of whether you will get selected or not, and you feel a bit nervous about that. That's one thing. But where you feel reluctant and hesitant to apply for a position because you're just not feeling it in the first place, like you can't see reasons to be excited about the job, leave it alone. You should ask the right questions of yourself and have the right answers. Like, what is your why? After that interview process, like I said, I felt really relieved, and it also got me thinking, what if I had actually got the job? That wasn't the best attitude to start a new job, like going in with so much reluctance, going in already dreading it and resenting, maybe potentially resenting what you were going to be doing, okay? This was the only interview that I have ever been to where I was low-key hoping to fail. So even though I flunked the interview, I feel like I am in a good place. Like, it's all settled within me now. I don't have that turbulence going on in my spirit as I had before I applied, and even after I applied. After I applied, guys, I was sitting there just thinking, what have I done? Every day I would question whether I should call HR and withdraw my application, like whether I should just go into the interview and deliberately flunk it. Now, that's not what happened, okay? I feel like I gave it my best shot, given the circumstance. I didn't go in there wanting to flunk it, but I failed it, and I feel like it just worked out. Yeah. So that's a bit of a backstory. So first of all, they said my interview was really strong, up to the point where they wanted me to talk about how I have demonstrated leadership and management skills in managing a small team in the past. Now, the thing is that I remember that I didn't really put myself in the best light when I spoke about that. I didn't give examples, and they highlighted that in the feedback to me. I didn't give examples. I just talked more generally about, personal leadership. I made very generic statements. I didn't give examples, and I should have known better. But like I said, maybe I just wasn't, on my best game when I went into that interview for all the other reasons that I have mentioned. So I didn't do that. And then another thing that I was advised about this role was that they needed someone who will be available to work mostly from the office, and for that person to expect that at some point they would be working full-time from the office. When it was time to ask questions and to, just talk about anything that we wanted to talk about or to address, I made it very clear. I was like, if working full-time from the office is a strong requirement for that role, then unfortunately I wasn't the one that they were looking for. So I strongly believe that that would have been taken into consideration as well. So I made a few notes about some of the things that I feel have helped me in the past, because at this point, I think I have a balance of experience and a balance of perspectives, because there's been interviews that I have passed in the past, and now I have failed an interview. So I feel like there's a balance of perspectives here, and I can share some of the things that have worked for me in the past, as well as tell you some of the things that didn't work quite well, and which caused me to fail the interview that I attended. So, some of the things you can do when you're preparing for your interview obviously would be, some of them are really common sense things, like read everything you can about the role and about the organization. Okay, read all of that, be sure that you have that knowledge down pat. And then obviously you also want to tailor your CV to the role. I know I was talking about interviewing, but I feel before you even get to the interview stage, a lot of what will carry you through will depend on the strength of your application in the first place. So you also need to pay serious attention to that, because if your application is not strong enough to even attract any interest or hold anybody's interest, then you're not even going to get an invitation to come to an interview, right? So tailor your CV to the role. You should talk more about your achievements than your past responsibilities. So it's not enough for you to say, oh, in my previous role or in this place where I worked at before, I was responsible for taking out the trash every morning and cleaning up the desks. No, you want to talk about instead that you have cleaned 250 tables, since starting just last month, Obviously, I'm just using that as an example, but I'm sure you get the drift. Talk more about your achievements than your responsibilities, okay? Because you want to showcase your strengths, and you can only do that when you talk about the things that you have achieved by employing those skills you have. One thing I am going to mention here is please include a cover letter in your application, even if it is not requested. And this again has come from feedback from from this job. When I applied for my current role, after I got the job, the manager at that time called me and she was like, one thing that stood out for me in your application was the fact that you included a cover letter, even though a cover letter was not requested. And your cover letter was able to showcase your skills, because I write my cover letters in very conversational style, okay? I don't make it too formal. Obviously, I don't use jargon or informal language, but I try to make it more personal. I make it a personalized piece of document for people to read. And in that, I show my strengths. Like, I talk about my strengths in the context of how I have demonstrated my strengths in the past and all of that. So I did that and it worked for me. And that was the feedback that I received. And so since then, I have made a mental note to myself, whatever job I am applying for, whether they ask for it or not, I am going to include a cover letter. Like, it doesn't hurt anything. If they really do not need a cover letter, the worst that can happen is that they don't read it. But a cover letter, like I said, can be that one extra step to stand you out. Please, if there's any experience you have in the past that is not relevant to the job you're applying for, don't put it in your CV. Don't. I know sometimes it feels like the more we can chuck on that CV, the better. And just on that note, okay, your CV should not be too long. So aim for about 2 pages, maximum 2.5 pages. I wouldn't even recommend 3 pages, except of course you're applying for a very high level executive position. Then I think in that case it can be excused if your CV is a little long, because there's a lot that you need to demonstrate around whether you have those high level skills to be able to carry out the functions of that role, right? But if it's just, your entry level interview or entry level job, please do not make your CV too long. Chuck out anything that is not necessary, okay? If you're applying for a job that requires you to be a case manager, you don't need to put your retail experience, okay, your casual job at Woolworths in that CV, except if there is any skill you employed in that position that you think would be relevant, in which case you just want to highlight that bit when you talk about that previous job. Don't talk about anything that is not relevant to the role you're applying for. Okay, so if you do not have a specific experience that is necessary for the job you're applying for, talk about what you're going to do about it. Okay, so yeah, it's possible that There are things they are asking for that you just do not have the experience, or you don't have the level of experience. So talk about what you intend to do about that deficiency. Are you going to be upskilling yourself by taking other training? Take part in some kind of internship to get hands-on experience? Are you volunteering? If you're volunteering somewhere to gain that experience, you also want to highlight that. And then coming on to something else, which is also really important, give examples. Give examples. And I think this ties in neatly into what I said about highlighting your achievements rather than your responsibilities. So give examples, practical examples of where you have used certain skills, where certain knowledge you have gained in the past has been applied to your work. Talk about those things. So for every skill, every achievement that you mention, give examples. And then at the end of your interview, when they ask you if you've got any questions, please come prepared. Come with your questions. Believe me, this is another way to show your interest or to demonstrate your interest in the job you're applying to. The fact that you're demonstrating curiosity, you want to know more. So you could ask questions like, what are the current strategic goals that the person in this position would be working towards at the moment? What are some of those projects, if you can put it that way, that are currently going on and which the person employed in this role is going to be heavily involved in? Are there any of such things? When they give you their answer, okay, you also want to follow that through with talking very strongly about how you can contribute to that process, how you can contribute to achieving some of those strategic goals. Very important. So use your interview opportunity wisely. Showcase yourself. It's all about selling yourself, as they've said, even though I know sometimes it sounds very salesy and pushy and all of that, and not everyone is comfortable with that. I am not, but what I tend to do is that I reframe that in my head. I think about the interview as a chat. I don't think about it as me facing an interview panel where everything is going to be formal. And when I think about it as a chat, it helps to mentally prepare me as well. And when I go in on that day, it helps to calm my nerves, because I just tell myself, I'm just going in there to have a chat with these people. If they ask me questions, I am going to answer as naturally as possible. Okay. And where I do not know something, okay, like I said, I would usually go the way of talking about how I intend to bring myself up to speed in that area. And on that note, guys, I think I have spoken enough. I hope you picked a thing or two from this video. If you have any questions, you know where to ask those questions in the comment section. And if you have any more tips that you would like to share, please put that in the comment section as well. I love to read from you, but I'm sure that other people would benefit from your wisdom as well. And before you go, do not forget to like this video. And if you want to subscribe, welcome to the family. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.